Welcome to this week's Conversations with Marléne and Pascale. This week we are talking about how we seek out relationships that are similar to the relationships that we had in our childhood. And we're going to be thinking about all of the different ways that shows up in our adult life, in our relationships and in our business. So before we get into that, let's us introduce ourselves. My name is Pascale Lane. I am a therapeutic success and confidence coach, and I help women to be more successful and confident in their businesses.
Hi, I'm Marléne Rose Shaw. I'm a therapist and coach and self-help author, and I help people to have much more confidence and super duper wonderful relationships. And I work with individual clients, I work with couples. I have a big focus on things like setting boundaries, not people pleasing, and really living life on your own terms.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, so how do you see this showing up in your work? What's your, I've got a very specific kind of idea of how this has shown up in my previous work. But how do you see it showing up in your work?
It shows up pretty much all the time. It's absolutely a big part of relationship work. We have a tendency to seek out people for relationships, from whether that's, I'd say, significant relationships. It might be with a partner, it might be with a good friend, it might be, even at work with colleagues, but significant people in our life. We have a subconscious tendency to seek out people with whom we have the same dynamic, that is the same relational behaviors and thoughts and feelings as we have had with a significant caregiver when we were growing up, whether that's a parent, teacher, something like that. Because there's a part of us that says, well, that didn't go very well. I want to replay it and fix it and get it right. And quite often people will notice that they've got this pattern. Oh, I always go for this certain sort of person, and it's always, abusive, or it doesn't work, or something. So next time I'll go for this other person because they're very different. But actually they're not. They're not very different at all. There's something going on under the surface that is that same theme, that same pattern. In fact, the fact that they're very different is often means that they're the same, that they've just learned to kind of present it in a different way. Yeah. So there's this sort of then replaying this pattern and trying to get it right that goes on.
Interesting. I used to see this so much, and I still see it a lot now, but I used to particularly see it a lot in my previous role as a social worker. Obviously working with a certain demographic, but it cuts across all the demographics. Like, it's just that in my role as a social worker, that was what I was seeing a lot of. But I really, really observed that so many women, and not all women, it doesn't always replay. I think that would be unfair, but very, very often women who have come from dysfunctional families, who have grown up with domestic violence or alcohol abuse or drug abuse, will often subconsciously just reconnect with people, men who are behaving in the same way again. And I'm really interested on your take on it as well, but I always see it as there is a real familiarity in those behaviors. So there's two parts of it, right? There's, first of all, they are desensitized to the warnings. They're desensitized to the red flags. They just don't see them because that's how it always was. So it's not really that, it's not big a deal, right? Because that's I grew up with that, that's fine. And then there's also the which I see more kind of with my coaching clients as well, which is that level of familiarity, even though it's like we're comfortable in our discomfort, even though we know it's wrong, we feel safe with it because that's how it's always been. And I always remember I worked with this lady once. She was an absolutely lovely lady, and she was, you know, like a coaching client. She was an affluent lady, intelligent, you know, all the rest of it. Good job. And she had come from an abusive alcoholic background, and she had had a string of similar relationships. And then she found her, you know, quote unquote Prince Charming, who was absolutely lovely, was just an absolutely lovely guy, really trustworthy, really safe. And she ended up just sabotaging it completely because it was so alien to her to be treated with love, compassion, respect. She just didn't know, she literally didn't know how to cope with it. And that was when she came to me. It was just like, you know, like what is going on? And we had to really kind of get into what was going on for her. She just kept pushing his buttons, you know, just pushing, waiting for him to walk away, which ultimately he did, and then he's devastated.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I'm not laughing that, but I'm just like, you know, it's we can sometimes do these things without even realizing that we're doing it. Because that is our pattern of behaviour, and that's because that's how it's always been.
Yeah, that's the thing. We find somebody who has that familiar pattern, or we find somebody who appears not to, and they don't. But we create that. We create it because we push. Because there's a, you know, I mean, I've done it. I'm hands up. I've done it in my past. I had some dreadful relationships in my younger days because I was testing. I was either with somebody unsuitable because I didn't know any different, or I found somebody great and I test them, and to the point where I sabotaged it and pushed them away, because part of me was trying to go back to those early days and make it all okay. Will you be the one who turns out not to be so bad after all, even though you appear to be bad? Or will you be the one who, I'll test you and you won't be bad? That's what was going on under the surface. And I've met, you know, clearly I've worked through all that now, all these years later, but I've met many clients who, and it's human nature, you know. I don't even want to say it's, you know, a certain type of person is. I think everybody does it to a certain degree. Some degree, it may not be, you know, quite to the level that some people do, but even those of us who have the best of relationships, there will be times where we have a little flutter of something. Oh, I recognize that. Or, you know, my dad did this, or my mum always did that, or, you know, this auntie who lived in our house always did. There'll be something that we want to fix because we're evolving beings. And we want to evolve, and you know, if we look at it from that point of view, we want to evolve and take all the stuff that doesn't work and make it work and make it better, and raise ourselves up and raise ourselves higher. So I think that's what's going on behind all that.
Yeah.
And I you know, I've seen it in business as well. For many of my clients are in business, and they take that and they put it into business. You know, like, oh, I was never good enough at home growing up, or I never felt good enough, or my dad said I wasn't, or my mum said I wasn't. So now whenever I'm with this particular type of person I work with, then I always feel, you know, as we were saying before about fear of rejection, or I have to prove myself, you know, this is how the sort of things that my clients tell me, you know, I feel this way with certain people, or I feel this way in business.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm just kind of like thinking back to kind of like my own practice, and how in the earlier the start of my business, in the earlier part of my business, I would very much subconsciously seek out women who I felt very aligned to from a familial point of view. And really kind of draw those people in, because I share a lot of my, probably a little bit less so now, but certainly in the early days, I used to share a lot of kind of like my story and kind of, you know, myself and my values, if you like. and really kind of like bring in clients who were very similar to maybe me in my earlier years, or had like very similar stories. And it took quite a lot of reflection and quite a lot of work to really kind of break out of that pattern, and expand, because that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we're all expanding, we're all growing all of the time. And I think it takes quite a lot of self-awareness to, I always say, I remember we did this a couple of weeks ago, Marléne, and you gave an excellent analogy of how I say it. You talked about the man being in the car and just driving around in circles all the time. And that's the thing, if we don't have that self-awareness and we don't understand where that story comes from, we can always just revert back to where we started. And actually it takes quite a lot of work to be able to recognize those patterns of behavior in order to break them once and for all. And I think that's why we do, I think that's part of the reason why we do the work that we do, is what we feel very passionately about helping our clients, whatever their need, whether it's relationship, whether it's business, whether it's lifestyle, helping our clients to really break away from that cyclical pattern of behavior and actually go in a different direction once and for all. Because if we don't do that work, one doesn't do that work, then invariably you're going to come back to where you started.
Well, it's because it's a pattern, isn't it? And you use the word pattern there, and I think that's one of the things I very much enjoy in my work, is patterns, looking at patterns, identifying themes and it's very common, isn't it, to say to a client something along the lines of, when you said that about that, it reminded me of the other week when you said that about that. And just to say it in that really gentle way, because it's just, oh gosh, I've just noticed there's this and this and they're a match. So, maybe every time you have a job and you have a horrible, mean middle-aged male boss, it's the same every time. But maybe that's because of that time you told me about when you were 12 and your dad was middle-aged then and he went through a phase of being mean or something. And it's identifying those patterns, because I think in my experience for myself and for so many of my clients, once they see the pattern, that's a very big step, because you're able to separate things out. Then you're able to separate out that relationship you had back then when you were so high, and this relationship that you're now having when you're grown up high. And then there are people who say, well, I see the pattern and I just can't change it. And that's often about healing, isn't it? Healing that stuff.
I think that's why it doesn't matter what type of work I am doing. Previously I used to work with, well, I did a stint of working with couples a lot, but I used to work a lot with women on relationships. Now I work a lot more with women in business, but it doesn't matter what the type of work that I have done or do. To me, everything starts in childhood. There isn't a single, we were talking about this off camera earlier, there isn't a single video or post that I've written that doesn't come back to what you learned in childhood and how that informs your decision now as an adult, or your behavior as an adult, because that just cuts across the board. And that comes up in business. I work with women in business, as I said, but how you show up for your business, how you show up for your clients, how you feel about being visible, how you feel about being rejected, how you feel about whether you are good enough, whether you are worthy enough, like all of these things, it all comes back to how you were received, or how you perceive you were received as a child.
Well, if you grew up constantly trying to prove yourself and never getting the validation and trying harder and harder and harder, or you grew up getting validated only when you were successful, then you're going to go into business and get burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, just because constantly trying to prove yourself and improve yourself is exhausting. You know, exhausting.
So what would you say if somebody who's watching this says, gosh, I know that, you know, I know that stuff from my childhood or relationships in my childhood with mum, dad, whoever, some significant person, that as I think about it, I know that I'm doing it again. What would you say to them?
I think it's about getting really clear on the story. I think it's getting really clear on actually understanding what that actually looked like, what that felt like what was the little you going through when you were experiencing that, and also like some context of what was going on for them, what was going on for the parents at the time. So that's a really important part that we don't always consider. You know, what was your parents' relationship like? What was their mental health like? What were their money troubles like? What were they juggling? What were they working through? It's always enlightening. It might not always be as relevant, but it is, you know, you just had like a horrible parent and you just had a horrible parent. That's just all there is to it. But I mean, context is always interesting. And then really getting clear, I think, on how that is showing up and really finding the balance between knowing what you are genuinely good at, knowing your innate value, really understanding that. And it's all about context, like it's all about context and it's all about balance. If you were somebody who had to really fight very hard for recognition, had to fight very hard for validation, just kind of like acknowledging that, like on a superficial level, isn't going to be enough. You need to really, really understand how that root works its way down into everything that you do. Because you know, like I talk about women in business, but it's about our relationships, it's about our lifestyle, it's about all of that. How is that really playing out? And then how much of that is right? Like how much of that, like what do you need to prove? Like what is the evidence that you are already doing this to a good enough standard? You know, to not like social work term good enough. I'm not talking about, you know, like just basic, but like to a good enough standard. Like if you are getting like 8 out of 10, that's definitely good enough. Like why do you need, like, yes, we all want to be like some of us want to be like the best, but actually what does it mean to be the best? What does it mean to be that much? Like just getting really, really, really clear on actually how it's showing up and actually what it means. Because more often than not, everything that you need is actually there. It just needs a little bit of rewiring.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But we're very good at being self-critical, aren't we, Marlene? Very, very, very good at telling, you know, like I used to do this exercise a lot, like with my clients before, you know, like, you know, and people watching it can do it now. Like if I ask you to list off now 10 things that you're rubbish at or that you haven't done well, I mean, you'd need, most of us will need extra paper. But then when I ask my clients to tell me something that they do really well, or that they feel really proud of, or that is innate goodness in them, you know, I've had women come into me with like blank pieces of paper, saying like, I just can't think of anything. It's soul destroying.
It's, you know, it's how we're wired as well to look at the negatives. I would say to anybody who's watching this who thinks, you know, I know I'm just doing it, I know, and it's over and over. It's not like we just do this once or twice in life, it's that we repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And that's often when people come into therapy, because they get to a point where they say, you know what, this pattern is every person I meet, or every business thing, or every job, or every place, or, you know, new faces, new places, you know, it's the same thing, isn't it? And actually people get to the point they say, well, it can't be all of these people. And it can't be all of these business situations. Maybe there's a pattern or something going on. I'm bored of it now, you know. So if you're somebody who's watching this and you're thinking, you know, I kind of know that what went on back then is, you know, what got me here won't get me there. You know, what went on back then is impacting now. If it's about your relationships, if it's about your partner, your family, your friends, if it's about people relationships, book a free call with me so we can have a chat and see how you can move forward. If it's about your relationship in your business and your success in life, your lifestyle and your work, book a free call with Pascale. And if it's both, come and see us at one of our amazing workshops that we're going to be running later this year. And we're going to be running together, but by one way or another, we're going to
one way or another, Marléne, we're going to get these
we're
damn
going to set you on the path. We've set thousands of people on the path over the years, and ourselves,
Absolutely.
so we can help you too.
Absolutely. But no, absolutely. Just you know,
doesn't take anything to book a free call, does it?
So a free call, have a chat, and let's see how we can help you.
I love meeting people, having a chat.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll put the links in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channel so that you can watch back on our previous episodes, and you can be notified of anyone's coming up to. Marléne, another fabulous session as always.
Okay, it's great. All right. I will say goodbye and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.